Our wonderful sim racing hobby continues to push the boundaries of ingenuity. With more companies entering the sim racing market, there is increased competition to capture our hearts and minds, and ultimately, our hard-earned cash. Enter Cammus. Cammus are a Chinese-based company who have only just recently entered the sim racing market. In this review we will look at their C5 direct drive steering wheel and their entry-level CP5 pedals. But the most striking thing is, the direct drive motor is in the wheel. Is it worth your money? Is it worth your hard-earned cash? Let's find out. To start off with, let's have a brief overview of what exactly the C5 direct drive wheelbase is and the CP5 pedals. The C5 wheel comes in two different variants which you can buy direct from Cammus's website. If you wish to have the wheel alone, this will set you back $249, but if you want the wheel and entry-level pedal bundle, this will cost you $299 US. I will note that the desktop clamp is sold separately for $29, and I would recommend buying this because it gives you a nice mounting solution to a rig. Other features of note include it is 3.6 kilograms in weight, it is a 5 Nm direct drive servo motor, 67mm in depth with a 280mm diameter wheel. It's got 20 programmable buttons, a display screen, 3 multi-directional knobs, 2 paddle shifters and 10 LEDs. A small disclaimer, Cammus did send me this wheelbase for the purpose of this review. However, they do not see the review and they see everything the exact same time that you guys do. Here we're just having a little bit of a closer look at the wheel itself. The buttons, I will note, are all made of plastic, and I do believe it's a carbon fibre plate put on the top, but remember the entry-level price. The LED is pretty good, it stands out nice and clear, however I could only get it to read the speed and not gear changes, and that would have been a nice feature. I felt the tactility of the buttons was pretty good, however the rotary encoders definitely need some work and feel a bit cheap. Here we have the very tiny paddle shifter, and I really did not like this. There's no reason it can't be any bigger, and this needs a bit of an overhaul. Here we have the back of the wheelbase itself. It's quite solid when mounted properly. We'll show that in just a second, and as you can see, it's got attachments for the fan, USB input to connect to the PC, the DC input, and just below there you've got some USB-C entries for the pedals, and also it's named for a handbrake and a shifter, of which they do not have yet. Here we're just looking at the CP5 pedals, which these are spring-loaded, they're Hall sensor based, and they're only included in the bundle, okay, so you can't get these on their own, that's important to note. This is just a close-up of the reverse of the CP5 pedals, and as you can see they are spring-loaded with equal springs on both sides, we'll get into that a little bit later, and powered and connected by a USB-C. Let's check out the unboxing and have a bit of a close-up inspection of what you get in the boxes. Let's look at the C5 wheelbase first. I was really impressed with the packaging. I think everything comes really nicely and it certainly feels like a premium product. I felt the wheel itself is solid, it's got a nice weight to it, but you've got to remember that the motor is in the wheel. I would also note that the wheel is made of genuine leather, and I felt that the stitching was really good and didn't show any signs of fraying. So I think what's important is, particularly when I buy a wheel, I want to have a particular close look at things and a bit of a detailed inspection. So we are going to take a bit of time with this. As you can see, you've got 3 rotary encoders on the front and a load of buttons of which to map functions to as you please. I would note it doesn't include any stickers to label these at all. You do get some designer stickers, but nothing to actually kind of label the functions, and I think that would have been a nice inclusion from Cammus and wouldn't have cost a lot. As you can see from the back, you've got 2 USB-Cs for a shifter and handbrake, which Cammus haven't released that yet, which might mean it's in the pipeline for later, and they do have USB-C entry for the CP5 pedals, which come with the bundle. Here let's just have a little bit of a closer look at the shifters. Now, these are completely serviceable, they're made of plastic, they do have a satisfying clunk, I don't believe they're magnetic. However, for my hands, and my hands are size 7.5, those are my theatre gloves, so I'm sure that's a standard size, they were a little uncomfortable to use for long sessions, and I don't see any reason why they can't be any bigger. There are already mods available on Etsy which you can buy, I believe, to mod your Cammus wheel, but this is such a small thing to change and would definitely improve the experience. Here we just have the included accessory box, which we have the standard user manual and power cable with power brick, and this is the fan for the separately sold desktop clamp, interestingly included in the wheel, which you buy separately. An odd choice. This is the power brick, again just pretty standard but works absolutely fine. And these are the two clamps that sit and attach into the wheel that allows you to mount it. Now these go into the desktop clamp, which I will show a little bit later. But if you don't buy the clamp, you're going to have to somehow mount these to perhaps an aluminium profile, and you'd have to use some T-nuts in order to kind of manipulate that in. I haven't done that, but I would imagine that's how you would have to do it. This is just an example of the stick, as I mentioned before. This is purely for design purposes, and like I said, it would have been real nice if they just included some labels, so you could put pit limiter, traction control, ABS, and all of that jazz on it, just to kind of enhance the experience. But there's no reason why you can't make your own, but again, a simple thing would have been nice. Now let's move on to unboxing the C5 desktop clamp. Now, I would note that if you want an easy mounting solution, you're going to have to buy this with the wheel. Otherwise, you're going to have to do a makeshift mount with some aluminium profile, which looks like a bit of a nightmare. An odd thing is the fan for this is included with the wheel, which would sort of indicate that this is almost certain to go with it, and it's a bit of an odd choice that they've separated the two things, and it would have been nice for them to be included in the same package. So this is an extra add-on, but again, if you want an easy mounting solution to your rig, or if you just want to mount it to your desk, I would advise getting this as well. Now let's have a look at the CP5 pedals. Now these are an entry set of pedals that you purely get to get you going straight out of the box. They're basically $50, you can only get them in the bundle, and we're just going to have a little look at what's in the package, and then we're going to gently blend into setup, and we're going to set up the pedals and then go into set up the wheel. As you can see, I've been really impressed with the packaging. Again, I think it's got a premium feel to it despite its price point, and I certainly have no complaints from that regard. Here we've got the two pedal plates for both the accelerator or gas, depending on what you want to call it, and the brake, and then you've got the pedal base itself. Now you've got to remember not to be too critical of this. It's certainly very basic, and we'll get into the design of the pedals in just a second, but this is essentially $50 to get you going, which if you just want to get racing straight out of the box, it's completely serviceable. However, these won't last you for a long time, and if you're semi-serious about your sim racing, you will want to upgrade these quite quickly. However, we will go through what you get in the box. Here's just the basic nuts and things to kind of attach the pedals themselves to the base plate, and then these are just some 3M rubber strips to stop it from moving on the carpet or wherever you choose to mount it. Now let's have a little bit of a closer look at the brake and the accelerator. These are Hall sensor based and they're spring loaded, and I will mention that the accelerator has exactly the same amount of resistance and is made with the same spring as the brake. Again, this would have been very easy to do, just put a slightly higher tension spring on the brakes, you get a little bit more feeling, but I think this was a bit of a missed opportunity. So pressing the accelerator feels exactly the same as the brake. However, they're solidly built, they have the same set of travel on both sides, you can't adjust them, there's no adjustability, but you are able to adjust the height of the pedal plate to some extent, so there is a certain amount of customizability to that. Now let's gradually transition into the pedal assembly. Now this was really quite straightforward. You just simply take the gas and the brake pedal, and with the included screws you screw them directly into the base plate. It gives you all the included Allen keys as well, so you don't need any extra tools. I thought that was a nice touch, and as you can see, it doesn't take too long at all. Just make sure you don't over tighten them and strip the screws, and as you can see, nice and solid and ready to be used. Nice. Now we'll move on to wheel assembly, and you're definitely going to need to have a look at the instructions. So we're going to do some bits. So the first bit you want to do is take the fan that's with the wheel, and you want to attach that to the underside of the desktop clamp. We're going to use a desktop clamp to mount this to my rig. We're going to be mounting this on a GT Amiga Titan, so if you've got one of those bad boys, this will mount to it. You want to use these screws. Again, it's not quite that clear in the instruction manual, but it is with a bit of deciphering, and you want to use these screws to kind of secure the fan to this plate. Now with a little bit of studio magic, we will speed up time, and voila, it is attached securely to the plate. Now we're going to secure the mounting struts to the wheel itself, and you've got to make sure that the wheel is orientated the correct way, because this inner portion rotates, because that's what facilitates the rotation of the wheel. Make sure the Cammus writing is the correct way up, and secure them with the included countersunk bolts, and simply tighten them up with an Allen key, being careful not to screw them, and as you can see, nicely secured and ready for mounting directly into the desktop clamp. Very nice. Now I was quite lucky here because the desktop clamp does fit onto the corresponding holes according to GT Amiga's website for the Fanatec, SimMagic and Moser kit. I was able to bolt this down. It doesn't include the bolts, so you'll need to have these and buy them extra. I advised nylon threaded hardware with a washer, a bolt and a nylon threaded nut. Simply attach 4 of them to the plate, into the desktop clamp, and you're ready to go. With this portion of the desktop clamp, you simply attach the included nuts on both the distal and the proximal part, and you've got 3 different angles of which you can adjust the steering angle to. Then it's just a case of simply slotting the wheel with the included mounting bars straight into the clamp, and then you're going to take some bolts and then you're going to screw them into the clamp through the top of the desktop clamp. Again, I will emphasize this is a desktop clamp without the desktop component of it, but you use this to mount it to your plate of your rig. This is just an example of how you would attach the right angled bars in order to make this into a desktop clamp. We did not use this on the Titan because the Titan metal plate is really too thin for this, so I tested this primarily mounted to the plate. However, you simply just slot 4 bolts in to connect those 2 right angled brackets and then simply clamp the construct to a desk of your choosing. Let's just have a quick look at how we mounted the pedals to the pedal deck, and again, the hardware here isn't included, so you're going to need to buy it yourself, but all I did was use a bolt, washer and a nylon threaded nut beneath, and this slotted onto my GT Amiga Titan, no problem at all. Once it was all nice and clamped, the pedals didn't go anywhere, and it fitted all nice and rock solid. The actual setup process of the C5 was actually quite easy. You simply head to their website and head to the bottom of the page and hit Downloads. From here you'll be met with Cammus Racing drives, misspelling, but then you click Download. Once that, you simply follow the on-screen instructions, download the drivers, download the software, and you're good to go. A small word about compatibility: this at present is only compatible with PC and will not work with your Xbox or PlayStation. On screen before you is a list of current games and simulators that are compatible with the Cammus C5, and also within the software itself there are some profiles which you can download to help you get your wheel up and running, and these actually work quite nicely. Here we have the Cammus software, and I've got to say, I was pretty impressed by this. I felt the user interface was really easy to navigate. I didn't have any issues with setup. There's some nice tabs on the side. It's not too clouded, and particularly if you're a beginner, I felt it was very, very easy to get your teeth stuck into. A couple of things you've got to do: you've got to calibrate your pedals before you start. I will note with the cheaper CP5 pedals, I did have some issues with them recognizing inputs when they were in fact stationary, but with a bit of kind of jiggery pokery, I did manage to set these. So you've got to set your maximum and your minimum limits, and then you've got to calibrate your steering wheel. I didn't have any issues with this at all. It all worked really, really well, exactly as it should do. And what was really good as well is that if you go into parameters, you can select profiles over here on the right. You can hit recommended, and then you can scan down, and there's multiple profiles already built which you can just click, and then you're ready to race. And I was in particularly racing the Assetto Corsa Competizione profile, and I actually felt the wheel performed really well, which we'll talk about now. The most important question is, what is the driving experience like? And I'm going to focus on the wheel, and then we'll have a short section on the pedals, because the wheel is the bread and butter. Ultimately, I really enjoyed it, and I think for the price of entry, it's actually very, very good. I will put a disclaimer here that my only experience of wheels includes a Logitech G920, a Thrustmaster belt-driven wheel, and my Fanatec DD2. And the Cammus C5 is definitely better than the gear-driven and the belt-driven offerings from both Logitech and Thrustmaster. With regards to comparing it to a DD2, it's not really fair. Ergonomically, I felt that the wheel was comfortable, particularly with my grip. It had some good feedback, particularly when I was racing in Assetto Corsa Competizione. I could feel what the car was doing enough to enjoy it. I could feel when the back end was going out, and then I had enough feedback and information in order to correct it. The wheel is a little bit small in diameter, and this might come into issues, particularly if you want to do things like rally, so it might be limited from that respect. But overall, I felt it performed very well, and the leather was quite comfortable to hold, and I wasn't using gloves in this circumstance. Naughty, naughty me. A brief mention on the CP5 pedals included in the Cammus C5 bundle pack. Now, these are completely serviceable, and you've got to remember these only cost $50 extra, but they're so close to being good. If they just included a stronger spring on the brake to give it a bit more of a progressive feeling, for me, I felt that would improve the driving experience considerably. At present, I just felt it quite frustrating because you're purely relying on your ankle's proprioception in order to decide how far you've depressed a brake pedal. They worked absolutely fine, I was able to get out on track, but you are going to want to upgrade these, and ultimately that's going to increase the price once again. So is this wheel for you? Well, if you fall into a certain category, I think it might suit your purposes. If you're after a small wheel that's portable, that doesn't break the bank, that has everything in the box, I think it ticks all those boxes. However, there are some caveats. As I've said, the pedals at present I don't think are good enough for long term, which means you're going to want to upgrade, which increases the cost. If you want to ever change your wheel, you can't do this because although it's innovative, it means that the direct drive wheel motor is in the wheel here, so you're stuck with this wheel for life. It's a nice wheel, but you can't change it. At its current price point, I believe this makes it the cheapest direct drive wheel offering on the market, and Cammus have really got to be commended for pushing the boundary and driving prices lower. I think the more competition, the better. The thing that lets this down is you need a set of pedals to race, and at present the CP5s aren't quite up to scratch. It's very difficult to recommend the bundle when just for a little bit more and the ability to change the wheel, you can have similar offerings from Fanatec and Moser. But if you already have a set of pedals available to you, say from your Logitech or your Thrustmaster setup, and you want to get into direct drive and you only have $250 or a limited budget, this is a great option. So I think the wheel, if you buy it as a standalone, is a very, very good deal. I think the feedback and the experience that I had whilst driving was good, and I certainly enjoyed myself. It was a little bit noisy, but overall for the price, I thought it was really quite good. If only the paddle shifters were a little bit bigger to accommodate slightly larger hands, they've got a really nice wheel here. So overall, my advice is, I like the wheel. I think the pedals need work, but if they match them all together and improve the pedals, they've got a really good bundle here. However, as a standalone product, I think the wheel is good, and if you're on a budget and already own a set of pedals, this could be for you. As I've not had the wheel for a considerable length of time and it's relatively new on the market, I can't really comment on longevity and reliability. If you would like to pick up the Cammus C5, I will leave an affiliate link down below and simply enter the code TTR on checkout, and this helps support the channel at no cost to yourself. Ultimately, with this level of innovation, it's going to be exciting to see where Cammus go in the future, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you found value in this, please feel free to hit the like button, please consider subscribing, and as always, take care, see you soon.